Coming to you from Grand Rounds Brewing Company and Restaurant, our town.
The Rochester art scene is vibrant, but there's been a bit of chaos as of late. Joining us once again is Catherine Richard from Minnesota Public Radio to help us sort out what's going on. Welcome, Catherine.
It's great to be back.
Wonderful. So several weeks ago, actually, you broke the story about the Art Center's financial troubles. Since then, they've had an annual meeting, I think, to address those concerns. They've kind of continued on with programming. Can you give us an update maybe on what's happened since your story first broke?
Yeah, sure. So this annual meeting, I think, served a number of purposes. First of all, it gave the community an update on where things stand. I think the community was feeling a little bit in the dark about what was going on there as they saw people leave, as they saw reports of financial turmoil. But I also think it was meant to sort of instill some confidence in the community in where the center is going. So some highlights. They project a surplus both this fiscal year and next fiscal year. I should point out that that has come partly at the expense of laying off at least 5 staff members, I believe. So they're looking towards a surplus, but they're also going to be operating on a really tight budget going forward. There's a show opening up next week that I understand is a photography exhibit, and it really was put together on a volunteer basis. So volunteers installed it, they brought the art in, and it's going to be operated on a volunteer basis. So it won't cost them a lot of money. They've also hinted at a big national show next summer of 2018. My understanding is that's already been underwritten. So again, it's not going to cost the Art Center any money to have that show come.
Okay, so they're getting a little creative about the way they're doing things.
Exactly.
Has the board of directors made any public statements about any of this since your story broke?
To some degree, yes. Again, that annual meeting was sort of the moment where they were speaking really publicly for the first time about everything that was going on. I think that they feel like the Art Center needs to have a different trajectory going forward, and my understanding is that they will be seeking feedback from the community. I think one conflict we might see going forward is whether this is still a local Southeast Minnesota contemporary art center, or if they're going to shift their focus to those blockbuster events like the Warhol exhibit, which apparently brought in a lot of people. Bringing a lot of people brings in a lot of money. But I think we're going to see some real heavy discussion over mission and what this art center really is meant to do.
Oh, of course. And the Art Center is currently partly funded by the city. Do you know if they've made any proposals to the city so far for additional funding?
So far, no. But I also think the city is watching carefully. I think one theme that we're going to see more of is accountability and where does that buck stop. We've seen it with the Art Center, and now the city is saying, okay, wait a second, why do you need that money? Do you really need that money? I think we're also going to see it with the Civic Theater and all of the turmoil there with the loss of their executive director, their artistic director, and now this division we're seeing between the volunteers and the current board. There's going to be some questions about how that money is being spent. We have council member Michael Wojak, who's recently proposed creating a position within the city that exclusively works with some of these publicly funded institutions like the Civic Theater and the Art Center to make sure that they're spending money well, that the city's getting more feedback on how that money is being spent.
Right, and really honing in on that accountability piece. So the Art Center and the Civic Theater, they're such important parts of our local arts community and regional arts community, really. It's a funny question for you as the press, but what do you feel is the role of the press, if any, in terms of, on the one hand, garnering that, informing the public, but also perhaps engaging public dialogue around how to support the sustainability of these organizations?
Well, I think one thing that's been really good in all of this is that people are talking, maybe talking about things that they haven't talked about so publicly in the past. We saw that especially with the Art Center. You had a very large group show up to this annual meeting, a lot of very passionate comments about how important the institution is for them, but how they feel like they don't know what it is anymore. And I think we're also seeing a lot of that dialogue happen very publicly around the Civic Theater too. Again, I think we'll see a lot of questions about mission going forward. So I view my job as someone who is trying to bring to light some of these problems that may have been simmering under the surface for a while, but now people are really starting to talk about them.
Sure. And this is also a really interesting time for these arts institutions to sort of kind of have all these challenges in the wake of DMC and all these other things. Have you heard anything just around about the impact of the DMC Arts and Culture Vision and some of these issues that are popping up in our arts community?
That's a really good question. If you talk to the EDA, the DMC Economic Development Agency, arts and culture and the cultivation of that is really part of their mission, right? I think that without a thriving art scene here already, that challenge is just so much harder to reach, especially as they're advertising Rochester to businesses outside of Minnesota and talent outside of Minnesota as a place where you can come and work at, in the best healthcare community in the world, but also have something to do on Friday night and have that culture. So I think for that mission, making sure that these institutions survive is really, really important. That being said, the DMC doesn't really have a direct role in any of these institutions right now. If anyone, it's the city who's funding some of their efforts that has that role.
Great, so I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you.
Absolutely.
Great, thanks a lot, Catherine.
No problem.
Our Town is brought to you in part by the following amazing people and organizations.
The new Clements Subaru proudly partners with award-winning KSMQ Public Television. Clements Subaru of Rochester. Clements' clear value promise is to make buying a Subaru fast, fair, and simple. The Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
And the members of KSMQ Public Television. Thank you.
Stick around, more Our Town to come. Lee Acey is here from Mayo Clinic to help us understand how they're using social media to improve health. In our past, we recognize an important woman, Nell Bryant, who made a difference at St. Mary's and on the battlefield. And if you're a child or a child at heart, stroll down the Bookworm Walk courtesy of the Rochester Public Library. Up first, we check out a thriving weekly event downtown, Thursdays on 1st and 3rd in this week's Our Culture segment.
People seem to like it. They keep coming. We're at Thursdays on 1st and 3rd, which is a summer music market that happens every Thursday here in downtown Rochester. The goal was to create a fun market and music festival that people could come to in downtown Rochester. There's a lot of visitors here who come to Rochester, but there's a lot of people in this community who just are looking for a fun summer activity, something to do, and it's hard to beat this place on a nice summer night. Oh, you can see all kinds of things. So we have food vendors, beverage vendors, artisan vendors here that have made things from here in Rochester and southeastern Minnesota, but all across the state have come here to sell their goods and show you what they're capable of doing. And the big part of it is we have music. We have 85 performances over the course of this summer on 2 different stages, 6 performances a day. It's interesting because it is a music festival, and so we have acts coming from all over, right? A lot of them here in Minnesota, a lot of them here from southeast Minnesota, but we have nationally touring artists and even some international artists come. I do like the music the best, yes. So that's really fun for me. I like to see the bands that are coming. And it brings these sort of budding artists to the Rochester community, so it's neat that we get to see some of them, and then in a couple years, all of a sudden they're a nationally touring act, so that's pretty fun. Yeah, we can see on a slower day, we'll see about 18,000 people come through the market, and on busier day, we'll see up to 30,000. You can't beat the food. There's some really great food here. And I would have to say I'm very impressed by what our local artisans do. What people can do amazes me, like what they're able to do with their hands, what they're able to build is pretty spectacular.
Here at Thursdays on 1st, I display my gemstone guitar picks, which are made out of different types of agate, jasper, and petrified dinosaur bone. And we also have some bracelets that look like something similar to guitar strings.
The first Thursday after Memorial Day all the way through the last Thursday before Labor Day. This year in particular, it's the very longest you can possibly go. It starts June 1st and it ends August 31st, so 14 full weeks this summer. Yeah, we're always looking for ways to improve it, whether it's little tweaks to how we have the layout set, to the number of vendors that we're bringing in. And one of the big things that we're doing this year are themed Thursdays today, for instance, is Senior Day. And we will also do Veterans Day and Youth Day this summer, as well as Pop-Up Park. We have a Diversity Day at the end of summer. So just trying to expand Thursdays beyond what we've been doing for the last 14 or 15 years, and then making it new and appealing and exciting.
It's been a hit, and I love doing it because you get to talk to so many different people from all over the world, and great food as well.
I was a little worried earlier in the week when they said thunderstorms might roll through, but it looks like everything kind of went south and we're going to be good. I work with our local disaster and emergency services here in Rochester, and so I have conference calls with them every Thursday morning that there's possibly a threat of a storm, and possibly the day before if we know that there's going to be severe weather. But yeah, it happens. We have severe weather and we roll with the punches and hope that we don't have it.
So I would highly recommend that if you were in the Rochester area that you come down to Thursdays on First. Be sure to hit both sides of the street, have some food, talk to the vendors, be friendly. That's it. Have fun.
Our Town. It's all about you, Rochester. Send us a picture of your favorite feature of Rochester. Rochester at KSMQ.org.
I hope you've been enjoying the many activities associated with Rochester Fest this week. The entire week is capped off with an 1860s baseball game at the History Center of Olmsted County, Schmidt Field, at 4:30 p.m. on Sunday, June 25th. And if you go a little bit early, you'll have a chance to participate in another crazy event, the Smash and Bash. The History Center is working to restore the 1964 Chrysler Crown Imperial, once owned by Dr. Chuck and Alice Mayo. For $5, you can take a sledgehammer to a junk car in order to help restore this historic car. And for those of you who love the arts, in particular community theater, you have a great opportunity to attend the American Association of Community Theater's 2017 National Festival right here at the Mayo Civic Center, coming up next week. This national event has a full range of workshops and speakers. Check out the details at aact.org. And if your heart is in the Heart of the City subdistrict, check out the DMC Heart of the City workshop on Tuesday, June 27th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Downtown Chateau Theater. Everyone is invited to give feedback on the schematic designs presented by the design team. This is your city. Show up and speak up. And soon, we'll be celebrating Independence Day. Rochester celebration includes a free concert band performance at 8:30 p.m., followed by fireworks, all at Silver Lake Park. Stay with us as we follow our latest story down the sidewalk in this week's Walkabout.
Hi, I'm Carly McElroy with the Rochester Downtown Alliance, and we're here to talk about the Bookworm Walk. The Bookworm Walk is a partnership between the Rochester Public Library, the Rochester Downtown Alliance, and the Rochester Park and Recreation. So what it is you will actually start at the library. It's a children's book that is set in 17 stops starting at the library in planters, so in flower planters. So you'll start at the library, you'll walk along a mapped route, cross the street, go along the river, and it'll end at a waterfall. This is a great program for younger kids and their families. A lot of the children's books that we're having is kind of preschool age, but it's really meant to be an experience for all kids and families, and something that provides a memorable experience for kids when they're reading. So when they go out, they have an experience, they are by the river, they see the flowers, they're reading the book. It's something that they can remember and hopefully take with them in the future.
Really bright colors.
So the Bookworm Walk will feature 2 stories over the course of the summer. They're perfect for younger readers. The first one is Planting a Rainbow. It's by Lois Allaire, and that will take place June 13th through July 28th. Then we'll swap that out for a book called Muncha, Muncha, Muncha by Candace Fleming and Brian Karras, and that will take place or be featured between July 29th and September 11th. Definitely come check this out. It's a great program that really highlights our river, and it's a wonderful program for kids and families to promote reading in Rochester.
Stay with us for more Our Town. Lee AC is here to help us connect with health information on social media. Stick around.
Our past. Remembering what made us who we are today. Brought to you by the History Center of Olmsted County.
In 1914, Nell Bryant arrived in Rochester, accompanying a family member who was having surgery at St. Mary's Hospital. Already a trained nurse, the skill and care of the staff impressed her, and she decided to enroll in the hospital's nurse anesthetist program. After her training, Bryant remained at St. Mary's. She joined the American Expeditionary Forces, planning to deploy with the World War I based Hospital 26 unit. She arrived in France in June, transferring quickly to Mobile Hospital 1. This medical unit followed the movements of the Allied military forces, remaining close to the front lines so seriously wounded soldiers could receive immediate care. After the war's conclusion, she returned to Rochester and married Dr. John Crenshaw, a Mayo Clinic urologist. The two settled in Rochester and raised 3 children. Nell died of a heart condition on May 30, 1979, at the age of 91, at St. Mary's Hospital.
Mayo Clinic has taken an aggressive approach to connecting with patients and the community at large through social media. Lee AC is the director of Mayo Clinic's social media network. Welcome to Our Town, Lee.
I'm really glad to be with you. Thanks.
I'm really glad that you're here. I'm a social media junkie millennial, but can you tell us a little bit about why social media is so important, particularly to healthcare?
Well, yeah, for Mayo Clinic, it's really social networking has been part of our DNA from about 150 years. So starting from the days of Dr. William Worrell Mayo and then Dr. Will and Charlie Mayo, they had this tradition where Dr. Charlie would stay home while Dr. Will would go travel to teach and to learn from others, and then he'd bring back those lessons to apply here in Rochester. And then in the fall, they'd switch places. Dr. Charlie would travel, Dr. Will would stay home. So that connection with others has been important, and they did it. Dr. Will traveled to 25 countries during his lifetime, including Australia, New Zealand, and Russia, and several places in South America, all over Europe. And that was really hard social networking. That was the analog way. When we saw that these new tools became available that made it possible to make those connections instantaneously, and also just recognizing that word of mouth is the most important factor in people choosing Mayo Clinic. It's a recommendation from family and friends that causes them to come to Mayo Clinic. We just saw that this is the new way that those recommendations happen, those connections, that word of mouth now is online, and we need to be there helping to provide good information for people who are concerned about health conditions.
Wonderful, and you're just changing with the times. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I started when I started at Mayo Clinic in 2000, I was working in media relations, so working with journalists to help tell stories. Now we have the chance to tell those directly and enable patients to amplify the stories that patients are already telling.
Sure, and you put your expertise and your commitment to the social networking on the line. You had your colonoscopy.
I did. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that process was like?
Sure.
And yeah, you made headlines with that.
Well, yeah, we've worked with a group called Fight Colorectal Cancer for a few years, and to try to help raise awareness of colorectal cancer screening and the need to get that done. It's one of the most preventable cancers because if you find a precancerous polyp early, it can be removed and never turns into cancer. So I had kind of a personal touch with this, as well as one of my high school classmates died just recently of colorectal cancer and had been diagnosed a couple years ago. And so anyway, we were talking with the Fight Colorectal Cancer people, and Katie Couric and others like that have had colonoscopies on TV. But with Periscope and now Facebook Live, we did it on Periscope, which is owned by Twitter. We said, you don't need to own a TV station anymore to be able to broadcast video to the world. And I thought, well, we do about 80 colonoscopies a day at Mayo Clinic. Maybe we could get somebody who'd be willing to do that. Within that same conversation, I said, wait a minute, I'm due, it's time, I should do it. And it just made it a little more straightforward to not have to wonder whether the patient was really willing to do it or not. But I just see it as an important way of helping people to understand that it's really not as bad as you think, to get screened, and it's also really important.
And so what are some of the common concerns that hospitals may still have around using social networking and social media?
I think a lot of it, one key one is around patient privacy, and we all should be concerned about that, and we are. And one of the things that we stress is that we don't publish anything about patients without their consent. But if they want to share, the reality is they're out there already connecting with each other and looking for answers. And so if we can help to inject some trustworthy medical expertise into those conversations, that'll help everybody.
And of course, the Mayo Clinic motto, always the patient first.
Right.
How does social media help the patient, really? Just some concrete ways that it might help the patient.
Yeah, when patients get a diagnosis, or more often when they're not getting a diagnosis and they're looking for answers, the first thing they do is go online, And so there have been some long-established, well-run patient support groups that are there to help people dealing with a diagnosis and to help them navigate through the system. We saw a way to help bring Mayo Clinic subject matter expertise into some of those conversations. A big thing that we do is we've done YouTube videos, for instance, where we have a subject expert talk for an extended period of time about that particular diagnosis. It's not a funny cat video, it's not going viral in any way like that, but within the specific patient communities of the people who are concerned about that issue, they get really wide pickup, and it's a resource for them, whether they come to Mayo Clinic or not, to be able to have more informed discussions with their doctors or providers. So we see it as a way of, at really low cost to Mayo Clinic, being able to take that same expertise and amplify it to the world and make it available, at no charge to them.
Sure. And on the other side of that, how do you see it helping the medical professionals, the nurses, the doctors, technicians?
Yeah, what our Mayo Clinic social media network is all about is helping professionals find ways to do their work more effectively, and to learn and to grow. And so, just as I used to do media relations and my job was to pitch stories to journalists to get to the end users, well, we saw Twitter and YouTube and Facebook as ways of helping to facilitate that process. We're trying to do that same thing for whether it's researchers recruiting for a clinical trial to help inform the public about the opportunity to be involved, whether it's patient education, whether it's making more in-depth videos available so that when a patient comes in, he or she knows what to expect and is able to ask better questions. So if a doctor's saying the same thing 12 times a day, if we can put it in a video instead, and if we can get the patients to see that before they come in, then there's a level of knowledge that's a little higher, and then the next questions are more deep and meaningful for the and more applicable to that patient, and it's less of hitting play and saying the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. And as an expert in the field, what do you sort of see as the future of social networking and social media in the healthcare field?
I think it's only going to grow. I remember of course I remember it was only a few years ago, but the flip camera really changed things. The old-fashioned camera where it had the USB and you could upload the video directly to the internet or to YouTube or whatever. Now the fact that you can broadcast live from a smartphone just means that social media is everywhere. It's part of our lives. 1.9 billion users of Facebook on a monthly basis, 1.3 billion a day. It's not going anywhere, and so we, as medical professionals and those who serve them and help them to serve the patients, need to be able to investigate how to thoroughly and safely and effectively appropriate these tools to do the work that is so important.
Definitely. There's so much misinformation that can actually be transmitted through a lot of social media. What sort of standards do you use at Mayo to kind of make sure that patients are able to, and anyone who's using it, can sort through that misinformation? Sure.
Well, there's a saying that a good friend of mine named Andy Cernovitz sort of recalled to my memory, and from high school chemistry, that says the solution to pollution is dilution. And by making sure that you put out good information, there's a way of, and from a reputable source, you have a good chance of helping to diminish the impact of some of the bad stuff that gets out there. There always will be the bad information, but if we can, but Google is sensitive to quality, and if there are lots of people linking to a good video, for instance, that we put out, that's going to make it more likely that that trustworthy information gets in front of the users.
And in your office, you use, I think, 3 key areas to promote social media. Can you talk us through a little bit about the different tools that you use, like webinars, I think, and discussions and the blog?
Sure. We use the general purpose social networks like Facebook and Twitter because that's where the people are. But we also have created an online community for patients and prospective patients called Mayo Clinic Connect. So it's at connect.mayoclinic.org. And this is kind of our home base. So instead of just being digital sharecroppers on Facebook and Twitter, we have a place that we own and where we can control the look and feel, and also that's part of that reliability where we can moderate the conversations and make sure that if there's misinformation being posted that we're countering, correcting it, modifying it. And really we've recruited a bunch of mentors, a bunch of patient volunteers who have been through the journey and are interested in giving back. And they're some of the best advocates because they know what a patient's going through. Doctors don't know what the lived experience is of the patient. They're not living it themselves. But by bringing in people who've actually gone through the treatments and have come out the other side, who are eager to give back, this provides a platform for that to happen.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Lee. We look forward to staying connected.
Well, great, thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at KSMQ #OurTown. See you next week on Our Town, the show about Rochester.